If you told me a few years ago that I'd spend Christmas alone, not because I wanted to, but because my own parents canceled it over an argument with my brother, I wouldn't have believed you. My name is Ava, and I grew up in a family where holidays were sacred. Every year, no matter what else was going on, we'd gather around the tree, eat too much, laugh at old stories, and forget our problems for a little while. Or at least, that's what it looked like from the outside. The truth was, my family had always been built around my older brother, Josh. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose trophies filled the living room shelves, whose mistakes were always excused. I was the peacemaker, the one who tried to keep everyone happy, who learned to shrink myself so Josh could shine. I didn't resent him, not at first. I just wanted to belong. But as we got older, the pattern never changed. Josh would mess up, skip school, crash the car, get into trouble at work, and my parents would swoop in to fix it. If I ever made a mistake, it was different. I was lectured, ignored, or told to be more like your brother. I learned to swallow my feelings, to apologize even when I was wrong, to put family first no matter what. I thought things would get better when we grew up. I moved out, got a job, built a life of my own. But Josh never really left home, not in the way that mattered. He was always there, always needing something, always the center of attention. My parents still bailed him out when he got into trouble, still expected me to understand, to help, to apologize. The final straw came last December. It started with a simple argument. One of those stupid family fights that starts small and blows up into something huge. Josh had borrowed my car without asking, left it with an empty tank and a new dent in the door. When I called him out, he laughed it off. "It's just a car," he said. "Stop being so dramatic." I snapped. Years of swallowed anger came pouring out. I told him he was selfish, that I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter. He yelled back, called me ungrateful, said I was jealous of his relationship with our parents. We said things we couldn't take back. I thought my parents would finally see my side. Instead, they took Josh's side. "He didn't mean it," my mom said. "You know how he is." My dad told me to apologize, to be the bigger person. When I refused, they got angry. "If you can't let this go, maybe you shouldn't come for Christmas," my mom said. "We don't need drama this year." I waited for them to call back, to apologize, to say they didn't mean it. But the days passed and the silence grew louder. I got a text from my mom. "We're just going to have a quiet Christmas this year. Maybe next year will be better." No invitation, no "we love you," just a door slammed in my face. I was devastated. I'd never spent Christmas alone before. I watched as friends posted photos of their families, their dinners, their gifts. I tried to pretend it didn't hurt, but it did. I cried, I raged. I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Maybe I should have just apologized, even if I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't worth losing my family over. But then something shifted. I realized I'd spent my whole life apologizing for things that weren't my fault, shrinking myself to fit into a family that never really saw me. I decided I was done. If my parents wanted to cancel Christmas because I wouldn't bow to Josh, that was their choice. But I wasn't going to let it ruin my holiday. So I did something I'd never done before. I made my own plans. I booked a table at my favorite restaurant, bought myself a gift, and invited a few friends who didn't have family nearby. We ate, laughed, and made new memories. It wasn't the Christmas I'd dreamed of, but it was mine. The days after Christmas were strange. I expected to feel empty, but instead, I felt a kind of freedom I'd never known. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for my family to call, to forgive me, to invite me back into the fold. I realized I didn't need their approval to be happy. I could create my own traditions, my own joy, without apologizing for who I was. My friends were incredible. They checked in on me, brought leftover cookies, and made sure I knew I wasn't alone. We went ice skating, watched cheesy holiday movies, and even had a secret Santa exchange. It wasn't the family I'd grown up with, but it was a family I'd chosen. People who saw me, who valued me, who didn't expect me to shrink to fit into their expectations. Still, there were moments when the loneliness crept in. I'd see a family walking down the street, laughing together, and feel a stab of jealousy. I missed the idea of family, even if the reality had never lived up to the dream. I missed the way my mom used to sing while she cooked, the way my dad would tell the same jokes every year, the way that Josh and I used to stay up late for Santa when we were kids. But I also knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't keep apologizing for Josh, for my parents, for myself. I had to learn to stand on my own, to set boundaries, to say enough. New Year's Eve came, and with it, a sense of possibility. I made a list of resolutions, not the usual promises to lose weight or save money, but real goals, to put myself first, to stop apologizing for things that weren't my fault, and to build a life that felt true to me. I promised myself that next Christmas, no matter what happened, I wouldn't let my family's drama steal my joy. January was tough. My parents didn't call. Josh sent a few half-hearted texts. Hope you're okay. Mom misses you. But I could tell he wasn't really sorry. I responded politely, but I didn't offer to meet up. I needed space to heal, to figure out who I was without the constant pressure to be the peacemaker. I threw myself into work, took on new projects, and even started volunteering at a local shelter. I met people who'd been through far worse than I had. People who'd lost everything, who'd been rejected by their families, who'd had to start over from nothing. Their strength inspired me. If they could keep going, so could I. Spring arrived, and with it, a sense of hope. I started going to therapy, talking through the years of hurt and anger I'd buried deep inside. I learned that it was okay to be angry, okay to grieve the family I'd never really had. I learned that I could love my parents and Josh without letting them walk all over me. One day, I got a letter in the mail. It was from my mom. She apologized for canceling Christmas, for taking Josh's side, for not seeing how much it hurt me. She said she missed me, that she wanted to talk, that she hoped we could find a way forward. I read the letter over and over, unsure how to feel. Part of me wanted to run back, to forgive and forget, to pretend nothing had happened. But another part of me knew that things couldn't go back to the way they were. I called my mom that night. We talked for hours about the past, about Josh, about all the ways we'd hurt each other without meaning to. She cried, I cried, and for the first time, I felt like she was really listening. She didn't make excuses for Josh, didn't ask me to apologize. She just said she was sorry and that she loved me. It wasn't a magic fix. My dad was still distant, still convinced that I should have been the bigger person. Josh was still Josh, charming, selfish, and utterly unaware of the damage he'd done. But my mom and I started to rebuild our relationship, one honest conversation at a time. I realized that forgiveness didn't mean pretending nothing had happened. It meant accepting the past, learning from it, and choosing to move forward. It meant loving my family without letting them hurt me over and over again. By summer, I felt stronger than I had in years. I'd built a life that felt true to me, filled with friends who lifted me up, work that inspired me, and a sense of peace I'd never known before. I knew that next Christmas, no matter what happened, I'd be okay. As the year moved on, I started to see my family with new eyes. I realized that I had spent so much of my life trying to earn their love, to prove that I was worthy, that I'd forgotten how to love myself. I stopped waiting for Josh to change, for my dad to understand, for my mom to fix everything. Instead, I focused on what I could control, my own happiness. I took a trip with friends in the fall, something I'd never done before. We went hiking in the mountains, laughed around campfires, and talked about our hopes and fears. For the first time, I felt free. Free from expectations, free from guilt, free to be myself. I realized that family didn't have to be blood. It could be the people who showed up, who listened, who loved me for who I was. When Thanksgiving came, I made a choice. I didn't go home. Instead, I hosted a Friendsgiving for anyone who didn't have family nearby. We cooked together, played games, and shared what we were grateful for. It wasn't perfect, the turkey was dry, and we burned the pie, but it was real. It was mine. My mom called that night, asking if I was okay. I told her the truth. I was happy. She sounded relieved, even if she didn't fully understand. My dad didn't call, and Josh sent a text, "Hope you had a good one." It wasn't much, but it was something. As December approached, I started to think about Christmas. I knew my parents would expect me to come home, to pretend nothing had happened, to apologize to Josh for the sake of peace, but I also knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't go back to being the scapegoat, the peacemaker, the one who always gave in. Instead, I made a plan. I decided to host my own Christmas, not out of spite, but out of love for myself and the family I'd chosen. I invited friends, neighbors, and even a few coworkers who had nowhere else to go. We decorated the apartment with lights and paper snowflakes, cooked a feast, and exchanged gifts we'd made ourselves. The night before Christmas, I got a call from my mom. She sounded sad, asking if I'd changed my mind, if I'd come home. I told her I loved her, but I needed to do this for myself. She cried, but she said she understood. "I just want you to be happy," she whispered. Christmas morning arrived, and for the first time in my life, I woke up without the weight of expectation. I made coffee, opened gifts with friends, and listened to music that made me smile. We spent the day playing games, watching movies, and sharing stories about our families, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In the afternoon, I took a walk in the snow, thinking about how far I'd come. I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology, for Josh to change, for my dad to see me. I was at peace with who I was, with the choices I'd made, with the life I was building. That evening, I got a video call from my mom. She showed me the family gathering, my dad, Josh, a few relatives. They looked happy, but I could see the space where I used to sit. My mom said she missed me, that Christmas wasn't the same without me. I smiled, told her I loved her too, but that I was exactly where I needed to be. After the call, I sat by the window, watching the snowfall, thinking about all the Christmases I'd spent trying to be enough, trying to earn love that should have been unconditional. I realized that I didn't need to apologize for being myself. I didn't need to shrink to fit into a family that couldn't see me. I promised myself that next year and every year after, I'd put myself first. I'd build traditions that made me happy, surround myself with people who loved me for who I was, and never again let anyone make me feel small. The new year brought a fresh start. I felt lighter, more confident, and more in control of my own life than ever before.
I started taking better care of myself, cooking healthy meals, going to the gym, and spending time with people who made me feel seen. I signed up for a painting class, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. I even joined a local volunteer group, helping organize events for kids who didn't have family to celebrate with. My friends noticed the change. "You seem happier," one of them said, "like you finally believe you deserve good things." I smiled, realizing it was true. For the first time, I wasn't living for anyone else's approval. I was living for me.
My mom kept reaching out, sending texts and calling every few weeks. She'd tell me about family news, ask about my job, and sometimes just say she missed me. I answered when I felt ready, never out of obligation. Our conversations were honest, sometimes raw, but always real. She apologized again for the way things had gone, for taking Josh's side, for not seeing how much it hurt me. I told her I forgave her, but I needed time to trust again. My dad was slower to come around. He still believed in keeping the peace, still thought I should have apologized to Josh for the sake of family. But even he started to soften. He'd send me photos of the dog, ask about my car, and once even sent a card that said, "Proud of you." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Josh, on the other hand, was mostly absent. He sent the occasional text, usually something short and vague. "Hope you're good. Mom says hi." I didn't expect more. I'd accepted that he might never change, might never see how his actions had hurt me, and that was okay. I didn't need his approval to be happy. Spring turned to summer, and I found myself looking forward to life in a way I never had before. I took a trip with friends to the beach, spent weekends exploring new places, and even started dating again. I met someone who made me laugh, who listened without judgment, who loved me for who I was, not for who they wanted me to be. As the months passed, I realized that I'd built something beautiful out of the pain. I'd taken the hurt, the rejection, the loneliness, and turned it into strength. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. When fall arrived, I started thinking about the holidays again. I knew my family would expect me to come home, to pretend that everything was fine. But I also knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. I needed to honor the boundaries I'd set, to protect the peace I'd found. I called my mom and told her my plans. "I'm going to host Christmas again this year. You're welcome to join us, but I won't apologize to Josh. I won't pretend that nothing happened." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I understand. I'll talk to my dad and Josh. I hope we can all be together, but I respect your decision." Christmas came, and I hosted another gathering for friends, neighbors, and anyone who needed a place to belong. We cooked, laughed, and shared stories late into the night. It wasn't the Christmas I'd grown up with, but it was filled with love, joy, and a sense of belonging I'd never felt before. Later that night, my mom called. She said she was proud of me, that she loved me, and that she hoped one day we could all be together again. I told her I loved her too, and that I was open to rebuilding our relationship, but only if it was built on honesty and respect. As I sat by the window, watching the snowfall, I realized that I'd found something I'd been searching for my whole life: peace. I didn't need to apologize for being myself. I didn't need to shrink to fit into a family that couldn't see me. I was enough, just as I was. Winter settled in, and with it came a sense of closure I hadn't expected. I spent more time reflecting on the past year, the hurt, the growth, the new beginnings. I realized that for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being alone. I wasn't afraid of missing out on family traditions or being the difficult one. I was proud of the person I'd become. My friends became my family in every way that mattered. We built our own traditions, a secret Santa exchange, a cookie baking marathon, and even a silly talent show on Christmas Eve. We laughed until we cried, shared our hopes for the future, and supported each other through every challenge. I realized that family wasn't about blood, it was about love, loyalty, and the people who showed up when it mattered most. My mom kept reaching out, sending cards and calling to check in. She told me about her days, about my dad, about Josh. She never pressured me to apologize, never asked me to come home. Instead, she listened, really listened to how I felt. Our relationship slowly healed, built on honesty and mutual respect. My dad was still distant, but even he started to change. He sent me a letter, a real, handwritten letter, telling me he was sorry for not seeing me, for not standing up for me, for expecting me to always be the peacemaker. He said he was proud of my strength, even if he didn't always understand it. I cried when I read it, knowing how hard it must have been for him to write. Josh remained a mystery. He was still the center of my parents' world, still charming and self-assured, but I noticed small changes. He started reaching out, a text here, a call there, and even apologized in his own way for the argument that had started it all. He said, "I guess I never realized how much I relied on you to keep the peace. I'm sorry for putting you in that position."
It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. I told him I forgave him, but that I needed to put myself first from now on. He said he understood, and for the first time, I believed him. As the holidays approached again, I felt a mix of nostalgia and hope. I decided to host another Christmas gathering, inviting friends, neighbors, and even extending an invitation to my family. I made it clear that there would be no drama, no expectations, no demands for apologies. Just love, laughter, and a chance to start fresh. To my surprise, my parents accepted. They arrived with gifts and homemade cookies, looking nervous but hopeful. Josh came too, quieter than usual but genuinely happy to be included. We ate, laughed, and shared stories, not just about the good times, but about the hard times too. We talked about what had happened, about how we'd all changed, about how we could do better in the future. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were still awkward moments, still old habits that were hard to break, but there was also forgiveness, understanding, and a sense of belonging I'd never felt before. After everyone left, I sat by the fire, thinking about how far I'd come. I realized that I'd taken control of my own story, that I'd chosen to put myself first without losing my capacity for love. I'd learned that it was okay to walk away from toxic dynamics, to set boundaries, to demand respect. I also learned that forgiveness wasn't about pretending nothing had happened. It was about accepting the past, learning from it, and choosing to move forward. It was about loving my family without letting them hurt me over and over again. As I looked around my home, filled with the echoes of laughter and the warmth of friendship, I knew that I'd built something beautiful out of the pain. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The days after that Christmas felt like a new beginning. I found myself thinking less about the old wounds and more about the future I wanted to create. I started making plans, not just for the next holiday, but for my life. I signed up for a night class in something I'd always wanted to learn, started saving for a trip I'd been putting off, and even adopted a rescue dog who quickly became my best friend. My relationship with my family continued to evolve. My mom and I talked regularly, sometimes about deep things, sometimes just about the weather or what we were cooking for dinner. She never pushed me to apologize to Josh again. Instead, she thanked me for giving our family another chance. My dad was still quiet, but he showed up, helping with home repairs, sending me books he thought I'd like, and even inviting me to lunch once in a while. Josh and I found a new kind of peace. We weren't close like we were as kids, but we respected each other's boundaries. He stopped expecting me to fix everything, and I stopped expecting him to change overnight. We talked about the future, about what we wanted for ourselves, and even joked about the old days,
The good memories, not just the bad. I realized that family wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, even when it was hard. It was about forgiveness, about growth, about choosing to love each other in spite of our flaws. I learned that it was okay to put myself first, to say no, to walk away when I needed to. But I also learned that it was okay to let people back in, to give second chances, to believe that change was possible. I started sharing my story with others, at support groups, online, even at work. I found that so many people had been through something similar. Families who played favorites, who expected one person to be the peacemaker, who demanded apologies without ever giving them. We talked about boundaries, about healing, about the power of choosing yourself. The more I shared, the more I healed. I realized that my story wasn't just about me. It was about anyone who'd ever felt invisible, who'd ever been asked to shrink to fit someone else's idea of family. I started writing, hoping that my words could help others find the courage to stand up for themselves, to demand respect, to build lives filled with joy and meaning. As the next Christmas approached, I felt a sense of calm I'd never known before. I knew that whatever happened, I'd be okay. I'd build a family of friends, a home filled with love, and a life that felt true to who I was. I didn't need my parents' approval, didn't need Josh to apologize, didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I hosted another holiday gathering, this time inviting even more people, friends, neighbors, coworkers, anyone who needed a place to belong. My parents came, bringing homemade cookies and a genuine desire to be part of my life. Josh came too, quieter than usual, but genuinely happy to be included. We ate, laughed, and shared stories late into the night. After everyone left, my mom hugged me tight. "I'm so proud of you, not just for forgiving us, but for forgiving yourself. You deserve all the happiness in the world." I smiled, knowing she was right. I'd spent so long trying to be enough for everyone else that I'd forgotten how to be enough for myself. Now I knew that I was worthy of love, of joy, and a family that saw me for who I really was. As I sat by the window watching the snow fall, I made a promise to myself. I would keep choosing myself, keep building a life that felt true, keep loving the people who showed up, even if they weren't perfect. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window and the soft sounds of my dog snoring at my feet. I made coffee, curled up with a blanket, and reflected on how far I'd come. I thought about the girl who used to apologize for everything, who tried so hard to keep the peace that she lost herself in the process. I thought about the woman that I'd become, strong, resilient, and unafraid to stand up for what she deserved. My phone buzzed with messages from friends and family, wishing me a Merry Christmas. I replied to each one, grateful for the love that filled my life. I knew that not everyone would understand my choices, that some people would always expect me to be the peacemaker, the apologizer, the one who put family first, no matter the cost. But I also knew that I didn't have to live by anyone else's rules. I looked around my home, the photos on the wall, the gifts from friends, the memories of laughter and tears, and felt a deep sense of peace. I'd built a life that was mine, filled with people who loved me for who I was, not for who they wanted me to be. If you're listening to this and you've ever been asked to apologize for being yourself, know that you're not alone. You deserve love, respect, and a family, blood or chosen, that sees your worth. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say enough and start writing your own story. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share your own story in the comments. You never know who you might inspire.